Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Asif Ali Sayed from the Department of Business Administration, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Today, we shall be discussing about the module Rural Entrepreneurship of the paper Skill Development and Social Entrepreneurship. By the end of this module, students will be able to understand the concept and relevance of skills required for rural entrepreneurship, and they would get familiar with the why and how to develop and plan rural enterprises. Introduction to rural entrepreneurship. Rural entrepreneurship is one of the crucial determinants of rural economy, directly concerned with employment and income generation dynamics of the hinterland. Although two-thirds of Indian population live in rural areas, still the lack of institutional support for providing backward and forward linkages has been the major lacuna in the promotion of rural enterprises. But this trend has been witnessing a sea change, with many companies nowadays focusing on rural areas and exploring these untapped markets with the help of their sales and marketing strategies. Companies are thus considering the rural markets as their profit centers for their future times. The rural-urban dichotomy reveals wide disparities in various respects. The division of economic activities between rural and urban areas is one of them. The rural areas specialize more or less exclusively in agriculture, while industries are exclusively located in urban areas. Given the weak rural-urban or agriculture-industry linkages, such a situation suffers from two serious shortcomings. First, as agriculture by itself has a tendency to develop at a slower pace than industry, the division of economic activities leads to uneven development. Second, since industry generally leads to higher levels of output per worker than agriculture, the gap in income levels between those engaged in the two sectors tends to widen. Further, the relationship between traditional agriculture and modern industry generally has a dependency structure, which puts the rural sector at a greater disadvantage in appropriating the gains of development, and in turn increases the disparity between rural and backwardness. In such situations, rural industrialization is viewed as an effective means of accelerating the process of rural development. Entrepreneurship precedes industrialization, hence the need for rural entrepreneurship. The main focus we have here is on the various aspects of rural entrepreneurship, such as its meaning, needs, present positions, strategies for future development of rural entrepreneurship in the country, and the role of non-governmental organizations in developing rural entrepreneurship. It is also believed that the growth in rural areas is faster than the urban areas. Improvement in business conditions, macro and micro environment, infrastructure development, and increasing number of customers, greater disposable income are some of the factors responsible for the growth of rural markets. Defining entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can be defined as an individual's ability to convert different ideas into various actions. This conversion includes lots of creativity, risk-taking, and innovation. To achieve the objectives, the plans, programs, and projects are planned and managed accordingly. Thus, entrepreneurship is related with identifying opportunities, optimum utilization of resources, creativity, optimistic attitude, learning and knowledge, managing macro and micro environment, and risk-taking. It is an attempt to create value through recognition of business opportunity, the management of risk-taking appropriate to the opportunity, and through the communicative and management skills to mobilize human, financial, and material resources necessary to fulfill the projects. Thus, entrepreneur is one who identifies the different new combination of factors of production, products, new markets, analyzes the sources of supply with new organizational structures, and who is taking risks to maintain the equilibrium between the demand and the supply. Rural entrepreneurship. Like entrepreneurship, rural entrepreneurship also conjures different meanings to different people. Without going into semantics, rural entrepreneurship can simply be defined as entrepreneurship emerging in rural areas is rural entrepreneurship. In other words, establishing industrial units in the rural area refers to rural entrepreneurship, or say rural entrepreneurship implies rural industrialization. With unemployment and underdeployment in rural areas, the rural population was migrating towards the urban cities. The problem was thus needed to be analyzed so that this moving population from rural to urban areas can be reduced. Instead, the situation can be different where people are moving from urban to rural cities because of the large number of resources available in rural areas. The government has also initiated various schemes and projects in rural areas so as to stop movement of people from rural to urban areas. But these schemes and projects were not so successful in the past because of generating lower income for the villagers. Then it was identified that government should focus on the individual enterprise. Rural entrepreneurship in India. Who can use the government policies and practices for the betterment of villagers, and also how these people would be able to manage it. There are some people who are considered as the local leaders and different NGOs who works in the interest of the rural people and are committed towards the development of rural areas. Despite of all these efforts, these people were not getting any recognition and appreciation in the society. Their basic aim was to stop the movement of villagers from rural to urban migration. Their objective was not only to stop this migration but also identify various attractions for the villagers in the cities they were migrating from. This was only possible when young generation will look forward towards various opportunities in their own rural areas. With all the constraints, it was required to analyze the strengths of the places and opportunities attached with it. Thus, one should see the reality of these areas. The people need to identify the opportunities and required to be different. With this, people enabled themselves with creativity, innovation and positivity. This then leads to emergence of entrepreneurship for the development of rural areas. The new and the young generation with a positive perspective, with lots of hard work and positive efforts, created the ecosystem for rural entrepreneurship. Fostering rural entrepreneurship. Rural entrepreneurship can be defined as entrepreneurship that exists at the village level, which can take place in a variety of fields such as business, industry, agriculture, and act as a potential factor for economic development. Rural development is ensured by the promotion of rural entrepreneurs who are interested in moving to rural areas. These set of peoples may or may not be belonging to these areas. Entrepreneurs following rural entrepreneurship, when sets up their organization in rural areas, not only uses the raw material from the rural areas but also involves rural people as human resources in the production process. Rural entrepreneurship engaged in the value addition in all the resources available in rural areas along with human resources. Thus, it can be said that the finished products are easily made with the help of various resources widely available in rural areas at economical prices. A large number of products and services in rural areas can be leveraged by entrepreneurs to set up new small and micro enterprises. In fact, entrepreneurship can be pursued in virtually any economic field. The idea here is to make the awareness of the linkages between various economic activities within a particular category in the Indian context. The following indicative sectors may be taken into consideration for gainful employment. Original enterprises created out of opportunities in supplying rural products to urban customers and new products to rural customers and consumers. Replication of urban experiences in rural setting. Industries in rural areas which are mostly micro or tiny in structure, are quick yielding. In other words, the gestation period is much less as compared to large-scale industries. Rural industries are labor-intensive and provide large employment opportunity to rural folks of all ages and groups. Khadi and Village Industries Commission at the national level and Khadi Village Industries Board at state level have played a pivotal role in this context. The village and small scale industries was set up with the following aims. 1. To focus rural population towards rural entrepreneurship. 2. To create the income of various artisans in the rural areas. 3. To increase opportunities for the self-employment of the young generation. 4th, ensuring the availability of raw material. 5th, to identify the improved methods of production. 6th, to preserve the craftsmanship and heritage of the rural areas. The term rural entrepreneurship is a wider concept which not only involves the idea generation and giving the idea a practical shape, but also provides an opportunity to the people in the rural area to grow, develop as well as bring a change in their living standards. The rural area majorly focuses on the agricultural sector, which is one of the strongest and one of the oldest sector in the Indian economy. The concept of rural entrepreneurship tries to change shape of the rural sector of the Indian economy. The rural entrepreneurship itself is a social serving concept which mainly aims at the rural development and improvising the situations of rural areas apart from profit maximization as the main motive. The rural entrepreneurs try to bring some change in the functioning of the rural agricultural sector through their innovative idea generations which might be beneficial for the entire society, as also create an opportunity for the people of the rural areas to grow and develop and bridge the gap between rural and urban market in Indian economy. Need for rural entrepreneurship. Rural industries have high potential employment generation. Thus, rural entrepreneurship can give answer to this rise of the large scale problem of unemployment. Rural industries have a high potential in income generation as it creates the employment, thus reducing the disparity between the rural and the urban area. It helps in promoting the balanced regional development with the industries developed in the rural areas as it gives rise to the economic activities. Rural industries also help in promoting and protecting the rich and old heritage of our country. It provides a different lifestyle for the people of the rural areas. It is very effective tool for promoting the raw material of the country. It keeps in check the migration of the rural population, and the growth of rural entrepreneurship can reduce the social evils like poverty, growth of slums and pollution in the cities, etc. Problems of rural entrepreneurship. Lack of awareness about the importance of development and the developing industries in the rural areas, lack of interest of the rural people towards assuming the career as an entrepreneur, afraid of the changes. The villagers are not much enthusiastic towards the concept of rural entrepreneurship. There's a problem of awareness of entrepreneurial opportunities which is not available to the rural people. The following are some of the measures suggested for the development of entrepreneurship in rural areas in the country. 1. The availability of raw material. The availability of raw material is a must for any industry. The sustainability of the employment potential can only be attained if there is a proper base of raw materials for the rural area. Second is finance. It is considered as a lubricant for setting up and running an industry. Therefore, finance needs to be advanced on time for those who really need it. Entrepreneurial education. This is a very important aspect to spread awareness in the villages and the rural areas of the importance of contribution to the Indian economy and how to move towards it. The business education should be provided towards rural entrepreneurship. The fourth factor is awareness, making people aware of the business opportunities and its impact. The fifth is setting up modern infrastructure. Solve the problem of marketing for rural industries. There is a need to set up common production, marketing sectors and develop with modern infrastructure facilities in the areas having good production and growth potential that helps in promoting export businesses especially in the rural area. Rural entrepreneurship leading to rural industrialization. The Government of India has always been taking a keen interest towards the small scale industry on rural industries with a motive to develop the social circumstances of rural areas of Indian economy. The industries of handicraft, cottage industry, etc. has shown an immense growth in the Indian market. The Indian economic policy of 1991 has opened up various international opportunities for the Indian markets and different sectors of the Indian market. Prior to independence, small industry occupied almost significant place in the national economy. Then the commonly used term was cottage industry or handicraft industry, which were located in rural areas. The government recently took interest in the development of the rural and village industries since independence. The important role which rural industries can play in ameliorating the socio-economic conditions of the rural area has received emphasis in most of the major policy pronouncements on development in India. The Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948 emphasized the utilization of local resources and the achievement of local self-sufficiency in respect of certain essential consumer goods as the most suitable characteristics of cottage and small industries. This approach was followed in the first 5-year plan, but the development of rural industries was conceived largely in isolation of the rest of the economy. The first 5-year plan stressed the development of agriculture, industry, infrastructure and social services, but all this in a manner that maximum feasible additional employment opportunities were created to raise the standard of living of the people. The Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956, while emphasizing the creation of employment, equitable distribution of incomes, and an effective mobilization of capital skills, pointed out that the characteristics of cottage, village, and small industries are favorable to the achievement of these objectives. Accordingly, the second 5-year plan looked into rural industries as an integral structure with the formation of 26 pilot industrial projects which were included to be in the exercise in area development in a spatial dimension which was added to the programmer of rural and small industry. The approach was followed up to the third 5-year plan, that was from 1961 to 62 to 1965 to 66. Rural industries project in 49 selected areas were taken up during the third plan. This plan envisaged the development of village and small industry sector to provide employment and to increase the consumer goods and some other producer goods. The program aimed at promoting village and small scale industries, including ancillary units of large scale units, in order to achieve a balanced regional development. This process of rural industrialization was continued during the annal phase, that is 1966 to 1969, and the fourth 5-year plan 1969 to 70 to 73 to 74, where a backward area development program was adopted, which included in backward areas being accepted as instrument. The fifth 5-year plan emphasized the need to ensure industrial development in underdeveloped areas. The Industrial Policy Statement of 1980 promised to generate economic viability in the village dependent on the strategy based on an industry cum area development approach. This was aimed at injecting integration of the program. The district industry center were set up during this period to provide the required services under one roof. Rural industrial continued to receive the main focus of development efforts in the rural industrialization development effort of the government during the subsequent sixth 5-year plan also. In order to strengthen the process of the rural industrialization, the sixth plan redefined small scale industries so as to include those manufacturing and repairing units as having investments in plant and machinery up to rupees 20 lakhs, and in case of ancillary units up to rupees 25 lakhs. The 7th and 8th 5-year plan accorded importance to the role of institutions in marketing, credit technology, etc. in the promotion of rural industrialization in the country. With a view to step up rural industrialization, a number of projects covering a variety of rural industries, which is food processing, pottery, leather items, ready-made garments, etc. have been taken up by the Khadi and Village Industries Commission, that is KVIC. The ninth five-year plan includes the following development strategies for the villages and small-scale industries sector. The first among them is the small-scale and village industries will be provided incentives and support to facilitate their growth and employment. It will be ensured that foreign investment does not displace such industries. Second, credit facilities to small-scale industries will be increased. For this, the financial institutions will be motivated to offer factoring services to the small-scale industries in addition to the present system of bills discounting. Third, the investment limit for the small-scale industry sector will be revised to Rs 3 crores to take the account of inflation and also to enable this sector the achievement of minimum economies of scale and upgradation of technology so as to withstand emerging competition. The fourth important dimension was technology development and upgradation of the sector, especially in the case of small scale industries, handlooms, power looms, coir handicrafts, wool, etc. will receive special attention. This special attention will be paid to sericulture to improve the quality of raw silk by introducing better silkworm breeding practices. Let us summarize our discussion on rural entrepreneurship. Rural entrepreneurship is one of the crucial determinants of rural economy, directly concerned with the employment and income generation dynamics of the hinterland. Rural entrepreneurship engages in the value addition in all the resources available in rural areas along with human resources. Thus, it can be said that the finished goods are easily made with the help of various resources widely available in rural areas at economical prices. The important role which rural industries can play in ameliorating the socio-economic conditions of the rural areas has received emphasis in most of the major policy pronouncements of the development in India. Thank you.